Welcome everybody to 311 Griffin's YouTube channel. We're playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and this game is obviously the latest in a long line of I don't know how many Assassin's Creed games, and I picked this up for Christmas. I've been playing it for, I don't know, maybe 18 hours, 20 hours maybe, I'm guessing. And and I wanted to do a review on it. I'm not very far along in the game, but I had some thoughts about the game and about what kind of the style of game that it is. These things might be handy for other people to know if they haven't picked the game up yet. I have a feeling that if you were a huge fan, you really wanted to play the game, you've already gotten it and you already know all of the stuff that I'm going to tell you. But if you haven't picked it up yet and you're kind of thinking about it, maybe this will help. And that's the idea. So the first I saw of this game was in one of their, I guess you'd call it a teaser trailer, perhaps. And I saw it, and I saw that it was set in ancient Greece. Bullseye over at Bullseye's Gaming, he really likes Greek and Roman mythology, so I hollered at him to come watch it with me. We watched it, and as I'm watching it, there's a guy talking about it, a guy from Ubisoft, I guess, that's talking about it. And all the things that he's saying and showing reminded me of other games. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If the other games are good, if the mechanics are good, I don't mind a new game copying off of them. But it was just sort of funny because he was acting like Ubisoft had come up with this stuff and that this was going to be a really unique game or gaming experience. And a lot of the stuff that he was showing, it's like, oh, that's the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. They just took that mechanic from Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and threw it in, and there were some other games that I thought of as well. So I'm going to go over some of that stuff. It's not necessarily negative. It's not necessarily positive. It's mostly indifferent. Then I'm going to talk about some positive things about the game and some negative things about the game. So I guess I should get the negative out of the way. Ubisoft cannot figure out how to set up controls on a game for PC. I don't know if they're used to everybody, and this isn't going to be a problem for most people. It's just a problem for me. I'm probably the only person in the universe that has this problem. But Ubisoft has it set up so that if you have other controllers set up, your game is going to default to being controlled by these other controllers that weren't intended to control a game like this. And there is no way in game to get through the menus when that happens, and there are no settings to go into to change it over to mouse and keyboard, at least not in Black Flag, and I haven't found any way in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I couldn't even get out of the front menu, and I'm showing that. So, like, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't move the mouse because I have flight controls for DCS, and I have to unplug them if I'm going to play any Assassin's Creed game. And I say that 3, 4, and this one. So those are the only ones that I've played here at home. So that annoys me at Ubisoft, and I realize it's not a big problem. They're not going to fix it because I'm the only person in the world that deals with it. But if anybody out there plays DCS and you're looking to pick up this game, get a hub for your USB so that you can, or at least have it to where you've got easy access to your pedals, your HOTAS. My track IR doesn't mess with it. But the throttle and the joystick and the rudder pedals do. So, huge negative for me. The other negative for me is that they claimed like this is the first Assassin's Creed where you can pick your character. And when they sort of build that like that's an amazing thing, but you can basically pick between a girl and a guy. They're brother and sister. Okay. That's awesome, I guess. The reason it's a negative for me, it's not a negative, it's fine, but the reason that I call it a negative is because they acted like it was groundbreaking for an RPG to do that, and it's absolutely not. Like, there are tons of games, and you guys know this, there are tons of games out there where you can fully customize the look of your character, the name of your character, even the voice of your character, and for whatever reason Ubisoft thinks that picking between two preformed characters is somehow groundbreaking, and it's not. So otherwise that wouldn't be a negative, but just the way they build it, it's not a positive. There's really nothing cool about it. I chose a female character. I really wanted to choose a boy or a male character, but I chose the female because I thought it might make third wave feminists mad. Like second wave feminists would be like, oh yay, a hero that's a female. But third wave feminists are like, she's too hot, make her ugly. So that's the only reason I went with a girl. I didn't. Anyway, moving on. So now for the indifferent stuff, like this isn't good or bad. It works for the game, and that's the stuff that's like other games. So the fighting system is just like Wild Hunt. When I say just like, I mean like almost just like. I'm not gonna say it's 100% like Wild Hunt because it's not. But you've got the hiding that you can do, kind of like in previous Assassin's Creed games with the assassinate option. But aside from that, you've got these rolls and parries, and you try to roll around behind them and hit them from behind if they've got shields. That all is identical to Wild Hunt. And then you've got engravings on weapons, which is very Wild Huntish. In Wild Hunt, you've got weapons and armor that you can put runes on to get different properties. In Odyssey, you've got engravings that you can put on armor and weapons to get different effects. So it's basically Wild Hunt in terms of fighting and engraving. Even the looting and the inventory is very Wild Hunt-ish. Now, they're not the only games that have ever done that style, so I'm not saying that they copied that. That's just kind of you either get inventory and looting like an Elder Scrolls type game where everything is lootable almost, or you get a game where there are some bodies, some chests, some plants that are lootable and others that aren't. So this one just does that style instead. It's not like they copied that off of Witcher 3, but anyway, so very Wild Hunt in those terms. The conversations, again, are kind of the style of RPG where it's a cutscene and every once in a while you get to make a choice between 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 conversation topics. And again, this is where you deviate from the Elder Scrolls style conversations and more towards Witcher 3 Wild Hunt or other RPGs where it's more of a cutscene and every once in a while you get to make a choice. A lot of fully voice-acted RPGs are kind of that style because it's easier to do. But, anyway, again, I'm indifferent on it. That's just the style of conversations you're going to get in. It's not going to be like you're making tons and tons of choices. You just get choices here and there. Now, where it gets a lot like Wild Hunt is that the conversation topic that you pick may not be exactly what they say. So sometimes in this game and in Wild Hunt, I've been a little bit frustrated because I feel like the developers are misleading me and I'm choosing a conversation topic and then it sounds like very sarcastic or very angry, or it sounds like, based on reading the conversation topic, like there's going to be a certain emotion evoked from that conversation topic, and then when you say it, it's completely different. They add a bunch of words to it and it's just completely different so that it doesn't come across the way you thought it would. And so instead of being sarcastic, it might be sincere. Instead of being angry, it might be loving. It doesn't happen all the time, but there are a few here and there where I'm like, I picked that one because I wanted it to be snarky, and then it comes across as not snarky. So that's very Witcher 3 Wild Hunt-ish. So let's see. Oh, the naval warfare, very Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which doesn't bother me in the least. That mechanic works really well. It's a little bit different because they're different ships. You're not using cannons, but you've got archers and you've got javelins and you've got boarding parties and you've got ramming and things like that. So that works. It's not a problem. But there is some naval warfare there. That's kind of fun. The bounty hunters have really been angering me. I haven't quite figured out how to clear them out properly, and I'm sure that I'm just being too aggressive with the places that I'm going and trying to finish all of complete the area. There are different areas, and you got to go loot treasure and kill people and all that kind of stuff, and I keep getting high bounties, and then like 3 bounty hunters show up, and 2 of them are over my level, and you can't get away from them, so you got to basically run away and try to get your bounty down a different way. So that's kind of frustrating me, but as a mechanic, I think it's fine. I think it's kind of entices you to be a little bit more careful about how you do things, so that's probably good, and I just need to figure out how to actually be more careful. So, one thing that is different, you do have a bow. You do have ranged combat in this game, so which is kind of cool. Like in Witcher, there wasn't a ton of stuff you could do ranged. There may have been, if I'm trying to remember the signs you could do. I don't think that there were any that were, or too many that were ranged. Maybe you could get some ranged stuff later on as you leveled stuff up. But again, you can do abilities. Not to go back on the fighting again, but you can do abilities which are a lot like the signs. In this game, you do these abilities which allow you to do different stuff in combat. That just like I mean, they're not just like the signs in Witcher 3, but they're very very similar, same concept. So, okay, so let's go into the positives. It is a very good-looking game, and it looks like there's going to be a lot to do in this game. And there's a lot that you can skip, and there's a lot that you don't have to skip. It gets a little bit cluttered in the HUD, I think, and there you can customize the HUD, but there's just stuff everywhere, and I like completed quests seem to keep showing up, so I've got to try to figure out if there's a way to turn off completed quests. They may just show up for a while, I'm not sure, but they'll show up with like a check mark, or maybe I know that they show up when you can go back to the quest person to finish the quest and get your reward. They show up with a check mark in them, so but then it's like they go gray after I finish them, and they're still there, or they mute a little bit. So that gets a little cluttered, but graphically it looks great. The lighting looks great. The shadows look great. I'm gonna go back negative again. I just thought of something. I guess you'd call it parkour or free climbing, free running, whatever, is not as good as in 3 and 4. I've found myself getting stuck on walls a lot. I found myself jumping off of things I didn't intend to jump and wasn't even facing a lot. The character doesn't respond as cleanly as I would hope, and as what I've gotten used to in the other games. So that's kind of frustrating. But anyway, back to the positives. Very good looking game. It's fun to explore around. Graphics are, I would say, if I'm comparing it to maximum graphics on Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it's very similar, probably a little better, but that might just be because in Wild Hunt, most of the areas you didn't want to look at because they were gross and they were very gritty and realistic. Except for there were some places in Skellige that were fun to look at, kind of pretty. And then once you got to Toussaint or whatever that country was, they were, you could just kind of stare around at some of the scenery because it was really good to look at. But the rest of Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was just ugly. It was supposed to be. That's a good and a bad thing. It's supposed to be very realistic that way. So there's lots of ruins to explore. There's lots of cities, and I haven't even explored that much in Odyssey, but it looks like it's going to be a huge game that's very fun to play. So I'm not trying to knock it by saying it's like Witcher 3, but if you've played Witcher 3 and you get Odyssey, it's going to be a lot of it, I think, is going to be like you're replaying Witcher 3 with just new areas. So the good news is Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was an amazing game. So Odyssey, if you liked it, if you were into it, you're basically going to be getting to do that with mostly better scenery and with some assassination, sneaking around kind of stuff, and with a bow and arrow. So it's going to be like the same thing, but in some ways better, and with less monsters and nudity and cursing. So the last thing I want to talk about, huge positive for this game, and if you've got kids, you might shut them down from this because there's going to be some nudity. Luckily, it's rock nudity, and this is all. I thought about blurring this out, but my video editing software is really hard to kind of blur certain parts of the screen that move around. So I'm not going to do it. Oh, and you get a hawk. I forgot. You get a hawk to fly around and tag enemies. It's not very realistic, but it's kind of fun. It'll also kill animals for you and stuff. But anyway, so if you would be offended by statues of Greek gods in the nude, you might not watch this. And hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, because it's after all, it's just statues. And it's not only it's not just statues. It's virtual statues, so it's not real people, but it is nudity, so I'm going out on a limb here. But The very first thing I purposely set out to do intentionally in this game was to climb Zeus and see if I could climb on his backside and his masculine body parts, and you can, which I thought was really funny. You can kind of dangle from his dangly, and that's I don't know. I'm childish, but it was entertaining, and so I'm gonna give him a plus for that, and the hawk, because I've always wanted to be like Etienne Navarre in Lady Hawk, and have my own hawk that ran around and did stuff. I wish I could make the hawk attack people for me, but I can't. So anyway, that's a little bit of a mixed up review. It's not super straightforward. I'm never that straightforward. I tend to jumble it all up, but you know, give it a try if you're into this kind of a game, and if you really liked Witcher 3. If you absolutely hated Witcher 3, I would shy away from this one. But aside from that, it's a good game, even if you didn't like Witcher, or even if you never played Witcher 3. It's worthy of giving it a shot. So that's it for me, guys, and thank you for watching. We'll see y'all around.